Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Portsmouth City Council work session on the capital improvement plan for today, Monday, February 8th, 2010, here in the Eileen Dondero Foley Council chambers. I'd like to welcome everyone, city staff, city councilors, and before I turn it over to the city manager, I'm just going to note for the record, and he'll probably reiterate, that there's a public hearing on the CIP March 1st. There's a budget meeting for a vote March 15th, and the capital plan technically has to be part of the budget. And so that is why we pass it in that fashion. That said, remember, and I'm sure they'll explain, the capital improvement plan, year one is the set of bond items that we typically vote going forward. Year 2, 3, 4, and out years is not the same. It's just a plan, and so they're not, part of our what we pass as a matter of law per se. Finally, you do all have a letter from me requesting your questions for the budget process to be given to the various departments, and I want to keep that date open until February 19th, so this is just a friendly reminder. Get them to me and we'll cycle them out and get them out timely so that people have time to respond. And with that, turn it over to John.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good evening. As the Mayor said, the purpose of tonight's work session is to present to the City Council the proposed capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2011 through 2016. This six-year plan that we bring before you this evening is in accordance with state and local requirements. Section 7.6, 7.7, and 7.8 of the City Charter outline the requirements and procedures for drafting and updating the capital improvement plan on an annual basis. The process of developing this plan started this past fall when a memorandum went out to all department heads asking them to update and identify any new projects and equipment that they felt should be included in this year's CIP. Once all the proposals were submitted, they were then reviewed by a subcommittee from the Planning Board made up of members such as the Chairman of the Planning Board, John Ritchie, Planning Board members Paige Roberts and Anthony Belkinsop. City staff on this committee included Rick Painter, the Planning Director, and Andrew Pergel, Controller, and myself. The plan that you have before you was reviewed in detail by this committee and various department heads. Fiscal year 11, department heads submitted requests to be appropriated in the general fund in the amount of $2.1 million. The committee reduced those requests to $1.5 million, a reduction of approximately $600,000. Over the past 2 years, we've tried to maintain a general fund appropriation in capital at about $1.5 million. In FY10, the general fund capital improvements were funded at $800,000 level, and in fiscal year 09, it was funded at approximately $1 million. The committee felt it was important that we continue the level at $1.5 million, and as much as the last 2 fiscal years, we've been below the 1.5 level. Total improvements for fiscal 11 for all funds are estimated to be approximately $28.7 million, of which approximately $6.3 million would come from either grants or other revenues or private funds. Total projects over the 6-year plan are estimated to be approximately $186 million, of which a large portion will come from either grants or bonding. And this year, you'll note, as part of the capital plan, we'll be talking about, as Steve Parkinson gets into transportation items, there'll be a large portion of those that actually are not associated specifically with local dollars, because I think there was a confusion in past years. City Council wanted those broken out, so we've done that. As the Mayor said, the City Council will be conducting a public hearing on this matter on March 1st, 2010 at its regular City Council meeting. Final adoption of this plan is scheduled for March 15th, 2010. And in accordance with the Charter, I cannot deliver you a budget for fiscal year 11 until the capital plan is approved. And it's important to note that just by approving the capital plan does not mean you've approved any appropriations. What you've done is basically concurred with the Planning Board, who has already adopted the plan in accordance with state statutes and the City Charter. Now it moves on to the City Council. And tonight we're going to go through and present to you in detail the capital plan with the various departments. This time I'd like to start with the presentation and the Assistant Fire Chief, Chief Achilles.
Yes, good evening. The first project is the replacement of a 2001 ambulance, and that would be occurring in FY12. Next item is a, I'll go off these. the project of replacing an engine. It's part of a 15-year replacement program, and it will replace an engine in FY11 at $500,000. Next item is the replacement in FY12 of the heavy rescue unit, which is 26 years old. Next item is the replacement of a 1988 fire engine, which is 29 years old, and that will be 29 years old in FY13. Next item is engine number 1 replacement. It will be over 15 years old in FY14, and we're replacing that at a cost of $600,000. Cardiac monitors and defibrillators, these are components integral to providing advanced life support. In FY12, we will upgrade all of our units which are over 10 years old.
Good evening, Council. I'm the Chief of Police. This project is the second half of funding, which the first half was approved last year. It's for an electronic document managing system, which will be shared with the city, municipal services, that will help us with the storage space, would electronically store paper documents. Next item is out to FY13. It's for regular radio improvements and replacements. Anticipated costs out to FY13. Automated fingerprint identification system is the next project, and we have pushed that out to FY14 for funding on that.
Marianne List, Library Director. This project would allow for the installation of recording cameras on the perimeter of the outside of the library building. There's no intention here for recording inside the library building or for ongoing monitoring. Rather, these cameras would gather information that might be useful to the police department in investigating behavior of some kind that would not be appropriate.
Next item you see is Station 3 replacement. We pushed this out to FY16 to replace the station at Pease Trade Port at a cost of $3 million.
We've been at the police department now since 1991, and this is a space needs study pushed out to FY13 to determine our future needs at the police department for space. The next slide is pending the results of that. We just anticipated some improvements into the building as well, dependent upon that study.
Steve Bartlett, School Department. This slide shows the biannual $500,000 money set aside for capital improvements to the school department. In FY12, we have designated those for roof repair at the high school for roofs that weren't done at the time the high school was renovated. At that time, those roofs were looked at and decided they could last a while longer. We're going to push them probably an extra 4 or 5 years beyond that. Next slide, in FY11, there's $25,000 to add to the existing $25,000 appropriation that we have. So we'll have a total of $50,000 to do a detailed facility analysis of the 3 elementary schools to prepare us for the FY15 renovation to those schools.
Good evening, Councilors. Peter Torrey sitting in for the trustees of trust funds, and in particular the trustees for Prescott Park. The first slide is the improvements and replacements to the docking facility at Prescott Park. It is well over 25 years old in the water. It has long since passed its prime. You'll notice it's listed under a public-private partnership because the docks do produce revenue that would offset the cost. Next item is the concession stand, snack bar facility, restroom facility that is located in Prescott Park. This was built in the middle 80s. It is built with equal facilities for male and female, and frankly, that's not adequate for today. In addition, the concession stand is undersized. It is also listed under public-private partnership because if the concession stand were improved, that would be a fundraiser with the Arts Festival. The last item for Prescott Park is the capital repairs to the two very old wood frame buildings that have been maintained previously by the trust, but with capital repairs and so on in the condition of the funds, that we're looking for some assistance from the city, as well as improvements or repaving of the walkways.
Rick Tainter, Planning Director. The first item here is under land acquisition. This is land that the funds that are set aside for acquiring lands for environmental purposes or other municipal purposes. There are usually funds allocated to this each year. However, no funds are being requested for fiscal year 11. These funds are used to leverage grant funds and also to partner with other conservation organizations.
David Moore, Assistant Community Development Director. This project for historic markers identifies $10,000 in this coming year. This project is a continuation of an effort already underway to replace approximately 40 historic markers which were located throughout the city's south end.
The beginning of the plan for the next round of the master plan update process, we're required to do that every 5 to 10 years. And our current master plan was adopted 5 years ago, and so we're aiming for the next 5 years to update it. In fiscal year 11, there was this allocation of $25,000 to begin the process by doing some small studies to gather data and especially to focus on neighborhoods.
$50,000 has been identified in the coming year to carry out additional aspects of the 1999 Pierce Island Master Plan. Currently, city staff is preparing a request for proposals for the signage on the islands, and these funds will be used for sign fabrication and installation. $100,000 is identified for playground improvements. The next project to be undertaken is the Plains Ball Field, and a master plan has been created for that park, and we're nearing the completion of Phase 1 design plans for that project. Doble Army Reserve Center, no funding is identified in the next year for the Doble Reserve Center. This was slated for realignment as part of the federal BRAC process. The city has received HUD approval for its reuse application and is currently awaiting approval from the U.S. Army. $25,000 is identified for the Jones Avenue Conceptual Master Plan. This plan would be for the 66-acre city-owned facility off of Jones Avenue. This master plan would be similar to the master plan for Pierce Island that was created in 1999. The city has been working with the members of the African Burying Ground Committee on a design plan which has been completed for the African Burying Ground Memorial for those buried at Chestnut Street. A fundraising effort is currently in the planning stages, and a combination of governmental grants, foundational grants, and private donations will be sought.
Steve Parkinson, Public Works Director. Chestnut Street area improvements is an FY12 project, which is a collaborative effort between the City of Portsmouth, the Music Hall, and abutting property owners to beautify and improve that section of Chestnut Street between Porter and Congress Street.
There are two items in the CIP for the redevelopment of the McIntyre building. This one is for public participation leading to a conceptual redevelopment plan. The funding for this has been identified for fiscal year 12 because of uncertainty in the status of that building.
This project is a placeholder for the upcoming year. This private parcel has been leased to the city with the intent of building a new playground in that vicinity. A conceptual design has been completed, but no final design has. The North Mill Pond feasibility study identified the creation of a walking, jogging, and bike path along the McDonough Street shore of the North Mill Pond. Easements from private property owners are required prior to construction, and this is also a placeholder for the upcoming year.
Phase 2 of the McIntyre redevelopment project is programmed for fiscal years 13 through 15. Assuming that the Phase 1 concept plan is on track in fiscal year 12, we would proceed to preliminary engineering, final engineering, and construction.
Historic cemetery improvements is the city's continuing effort to improve and maintain the 5 historic cemeteries located at various locations throughout the city. These are matching funds that are utilized to hire a specialist to rehabilitate the historic stones in these cemeteries. Seawall repairs and improvements involve the city-owned seawalls along the waterfront. This with some funding from last year. The first two projects will be along South Mill Street and the Mechanic Street pump station. And the next page lists the various seawalls that we own throughout the waterfront. Municipal complex elevator repairs. The existing elevators located in the City Hall section of the municipal complex are part of the original 64 edition and are well beyond their lifespan. Continuing funding for the reclamation of the former stump dump off Route 33 for its ultimate use as a recreational facility. Municipal complex for the replacement of the wooden garage structure located next to the boiler house for needed storage of city records as well as various documents. Maple Haven stormwater drain system. This is a system that was built in the 50s and is in need of replacement. We're in the process of doing design on that, and this in FY11 will be construction funding. Citywide facilities, capital improvements. Every other year, we request funds to invest in improvements to the municipally owned facilities throughout the city. And on the next page, you'll see the listing of things that will be improved over the next 2-year lifespan of that funding. Indoor pool rehabilitation. This pool is well in excess of its life expectancy and is in need of dire replacement. The roof system, the gutter system, pool liner, those are the kinds of things that need to be replaced. Sound barriers along I-95. This is a joint venture with federal and state dollars to improve the lifestyle of people along the I-95 corridor, primarily in the Atlantic Heights and the Panaway Manor neighborhoods. High Hanover parking facility capital improvements. As with any major structure, it needs ongoing capital expenditures to maintain its life. This is all from parking revenues.
Alan Brady, Information Technology Coordinator for the city. The following upgrades are for the information technology replacements throughout the city, not including the schools. For the City Hall, we have allocated $15,000 for an upgrade to the Channel 22 system, which is currently an analog system, and we're hoping to push that to a digital system. For Public Works, $40,000 allocated for the replacements of the radio system. A library, we allocated $30,000 for replacement for the current server, which is over there. And Recreation Department, $0. Police Department, that's $119,000. That's a replacement of current laptops and their cruisers, servers, miscellaneous IT equipment, which is stated also in the sheets following. And Fire Department is $40,000, and that's a replacement of the radio system. Thank you.
Public transportation section, the first project is are continuing to add bus shelters along our heavily utilized routes. This year we're looking for some enhancement grants along with our own funding for the Kearsarge Way, Osprey Landing area. Public transportation, the Greater Portsmouth Transportation Management Association. We're a contributor along with PEAS and other entities in establishing alternatives to the public or the private auto usage, primarily in the Pease Tradeport area. Free public parking shared lot agreements, like the St. John's Masonic Temple. These funds come out of our unmet parking needs. Parking violations management program. As with any electronic device, they have a short life expectancy, and we're accumulating funds to replace them at their expected lifespan in FY13. This again from revenues from the parking. Continuing our replacement of the single meter parking devices with the pay and display lots, pay and display equipment, FY11 and FY12. Continuing to set aside funds for a wayfinding system through the entire city so that people can get around the city in a better manner. Spinney Road, new sidewalk construction from Islington to Middle in FY 14 and 15. State Street sidewalk replacement between Middle Street and Pleasant Street, slated for FY 11. Our every other year funding for citywide sidewalk reconstruction program, which we couple with our roadway management program, along with other work that other utilities are doing in the city. This year, FY 11, and then FY 13 after that. And on the next page, you'll see the listing where that money is expected to be spent in the next 2 years. Beverly Hill Road, new sidewalk and shoulders, basically from the Y up to the intersection of Beverly and Middle Road, and finishing off the sidewalk from in front of Public Works to the current end of the sidewalk at West Road. That's slated for construction in FY 15 and design money in FY 12 and 13. US Route 1, new sidewalk construction between Hoover Drive and Constitution Ave, slated for FY 14 and 15. Middle Road sidewalk construction. The city received a petition last year from the residents in this neighborhood. Basically, it's a replacement of the existing sidewalk, which is a combination of various types, between Spinney Road and Middle Street. Continuing our investment in our traffic signals throughout the city. The next location will be Bartlett Street at Islington or at Granite Street at Woodbury, scheduled for FY 11. Throughout the year, the Traffic Safety Committee receives requests for improvements at various intersections in neighborhoods, and we're setting up a program similar in nature to our other every other year type of funding to address these small projects within the localized neighborhoods. Two sections that come on that we're proposing for this next year. One is at the intersection of Austin at Middle Street, and the other is at Thornton Street and Thornton Street Extension. A joint project with the federal and the state in FY 12 would be the Market Street Railroad crossing, installing devices, signal devices. The railroad has already replaced the crossing itself, but it needs of signalization. Intersection of Islington, Bartlett, Jewel Court realignment. This project is slated for FY 16 at the present time for construction. Woodbury Avenue turning lanes and traffic operational improvements. We've received some funding from a developer for this particular project, and we're looking to get enough funding over the next 2 years so that the project can be constructed. Replacement of the Maplewood Ave culvert, North Mill Pond. This project is to replace the existing deteriorating metal arch that is in there and recreate the type of structure that was there previous to that. We have already received design funding through a grant and are looking for construction in FY 15. Kate Street Bridge replacement. This bridge is currently in the long-range plan for FY 2030 construction. McDonough Street area improvement projects. If you remember, last year we received the first year of funding that was slated for over a 5-year period to improve the sidewalks and traffic calming areas within that neighborhood. Ocean Road upgrade traffic calming. This is the final year of funding to start the improvements to this corridor, with the ultimate City of Portsmouth taking over control of the Ocean Road. Aldrich Road traffic safety improvements. There again, a project that was initiated by the neighborhood through the Traffic Safety Committee. We received some funding last year for design. This is additional funding so that the design can be completed, with construction slated for FY 12. Traffic modeling project. This is a project along the Route 1 corridor and primarily in the downtown area that will build off the regional model so that we can gauge changes in street directions and events when we block off streets to see what happens with the traffic. slated for FY 12 and 13. Continuing our reforesting of the streets through the Trees and Greenery Committee, citywide tree replacement program. Transportation plan studies. The city has not undertaken a comprehensive bicycle, pedestrian, truck route, and downtown circulation study for many years, and this would be accumulation of funding to have that done. Gateway improvements from exit 7 to the downtown area. Construction funding over FY 12, 14, and 16. As I mentioned earlier, our street paving management rehabilitation program. These are funds that are utilized over the next 2 years throughout the city. And on the next page, you'll see the listing of the various projects that are anticipated to be utilized. Islington streetscape improvements. The study has now been completed. We're looking for funding in FY 11 to do design with construction in FY 13 and 14 of these improvements. Maplewood Ave rehabilitation, similar to Woodbury Avenue. There is a dire need to slow the traffic down through this neighborhood. Design funding in FY 11 and construction money in FY 12 to coincide with waterline replacement project that is slated for that same year. This year we have set up a same type of program on an every other year funding cycle to do improvements to the roadway system in Pease. We're looking for FY 12 for the first year on this, and the next sheet lists the streets and estimated dollars at this point of work that needs to be done in that area. The next series of projects are those within the transportation area that are indirect or are funded by other agencies and not the city. There is the first project, US Route 1 at Constitution. The city has received some funding for the developer and looking for additional funding from the state to complete the design and construction in FY 13. The replacement of the B&M Railroad at Bartlett Street. Currently, there is no funding year or construction year slated for that. Next project is the Atlantic Heights streetscape improvements, continuing with the final projects up there to complete that neighborhood. These are funding that comes through the CDBG program. US Route 1 roadway reconstruction from Wilson Road to Constitution Ave. Currently, it is slated for construction in 2020. The next series of projects deal with the reconstruction of the US Route 1 bypass, which is going to concentrate primarily on the bridge structures at this point in time. Looking at FY 11, primarily the intersection of Route 1 near Bolorama, where they intend to remove the flyover bridge and put in a fully signalized intersection. Reconstruction of bridges along the US Route 1 bypass north in FY 12. And currently, the Rockingham Planning Commission has in their long-range plan for the reconstruction of the traffic circle in 2025. But the New Hampshire DOT does not have that in their current 10-year plan. Next project deals with the project on Pease that is being proposed by the PDA to install a roundabout in the vicinity of where their old office used to be.
Good evening. My name is Peter Rice. I'm the city engineer for the Water and Sewer Divisions. The first 5 slides address the ongoing long-term control plan sewer separation program. The first 3 are what we call the Lincoln area, and they're broken into projects 3A, 3B, and 3C. They are required per a EPA consent decree. Go ahead. And one more. The next item is Cass Street area sewer separation, and that builds off the ongoing Bartlett Street project that's currently under construction. That is to be constructed and completed by January 2012, and that's a consent decree item as well. This item addresses the non-eligible items for these sewer separation construction projects. This Fleet Street project is to get in and take care of the underground utilities, the sewer and drain, prior to the streetscape work. We have a number of cross-country sewer lines that are inundated and require maintenance work. This item addresses the flooding in those areas and addresses ongoing problems. This item is the upcoming wastewater master plan for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. It's nearing completion and will be submitted to the EPA in June of this year. This item is in conjunction with the culvert replacement on Maplewood Avenue. It'll be addressing the sewer in that area.
David Allen, Deputy Director of Public Works. The first project on the water is the annual water line replacement. This project consists of replacing water lines typically in areas where other projects are going, such as the sewer or the road, the street paving. This next year shows Lincoln Ave area, Cass Street, and Cuts being taken care of. The next project is source water augmentation. Our previous master plan had shown that by 2020 we need to secure an additional source, and this would cover securing, developing, and permitting an additional source water. The next project is the Maplewood Ave water line replacement. This is a section of water line that will provide another loop into the downtown area. It consists of about 1.5 miles of water line upgrade. Next project is an out-year project. It's the replacement of the the Osprey Landing water tank. Similarly, the next project is the Hobbs Hill tank out on Pease. This would be the replacement of that tank. The next project identifies upgrades to our 9 drinking water wells. Each well has various outstanding issues relative to SCADA system, motors, and pump upgrades, and variable frequency drives. And the last project is the Wild Rose Lane, Little Harbor. It's the connection that comes off of Odiorm Point and provides the redundant feed into the Newcastle portion of the water system.
Thank you, Your Honor. What we would do now is, what we have in the past, is to open up to city council members to ask specific questions regarding any of the projects that we've presented.
Assistant Mayor Clayburgh.
Question about the ones that refer to recreation, the stump dump and pool, and I guess, would it be a good idea for us to wait until the study comes out and then determine which?
Well, again, if I might, Your Honor.
Please.
This is a plan. We're not committing any money. So the actual study is in progress. We know that we do have some potential opportunities with fields. But what we identified, if you saw, there is money set aside for the stump dump, which is a field that was identified in our retreat as part of the recreation study. So again, this may be amended next year as we go forward. But again, it's a capital plan. It's something they identify, those sites that we feel that need to be identified this year. It doesn't mean that, for example, something cannot be changed during the process. Things that you have to remember are this. Number one, you need to remember that anything here needs to be appropriated through the general fund budget if it is identified as a general fund item. If it is an item that is scheduled for bonding, it is not approved until it goes before the city council. So, for example, the FY10 bondings that were identified last year are up for bonding, and we have a public hearing coming up on Tuesday night for those items that were identified. So, again, if circumstances change, we don't have to move forward on those bonding items, or if something changes where we have to bring a bonding item forward, we would do that. Again, it's a plan, and a plan doesn't remain static for the whole year.
Nancy?
When is the study coming out? Do we have a date that it will
Well, we
be
have-
to us?
We're having the second portion of input session will take place, I believe, on February 18th for the indoor portion. And then from there, we hope to have a completed study to the city council soon after that.
Further questions? Bob?
If I may ask, I have a couple of questions on a few projects. These are probably simple answers.
Could you identify the page when you're speaking of them?
The first is the bus shelters on page 94. I'm just curious how far south those go on Route 1. I know that they address northbound. I'm wondering how far south they go.
Steve, do you want to?
Currently on our Lafayette run, we have a bus shelter at Crossroads on the southbound side. We have one on the northbound side, but in the area of the old movie theater. And we also have one currently on by DeMoulas in that shopping center. The route goes as far south as the Hillcrest Trailer Park, or Hillcrest Park.
So down beyond the new fire station?
Yes.
Thank you. The second question has to do with page 43, the cardiac monitors. I know that these are being replaced because they're used, but is there any possibility of using those used machines in other municipal buildings, or are they just so out of date they need to be replaced totally?
Okay.
Assistant Chief Achilles. Actually, those, we've had refurbished them. We have a maintenance program. So over the last 4 years, we've been upgrading them. Right now, they're coming out with a new technology that's we have not engaged in. It's about 2 years old. We continue to upgrade our monitors. At the point where we're going to replace these, there's no more upgrades available, and we'll have to get rid of them.
And I might just add that we do have monitors in the various buildings that are made for people that do not have training in using defibrillators. These actually will walk you through the process. So there's one right in the back room in case we ever need one here. So,
Thank you.
and we have them in other buildings as well.
Council Lister, the ones that we're looking at would primarily go on the ambulances.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate the effort the city's put forth to make sure that the machines are available in places where large gatherings are held. The next one I have is page 46, the fingerprinting. And again, wondering if that is available to the police department. Is that also something that we can use when we do have new employees and they have to have a fingerprint for a criminal records check? Would that be used?
Yes, it could.
Thank you. I believe the Pine Street Playground is on the list to be done, or...
This year, it's
this
Pine
year.
Street, it was scheduled for last year, but the bids didn't come in favorable. So we rejected the bids, and we're going to be going out soon, or we might even be out already. Are we out already, David?
Next week, hopefully.
Next week, and hopefully they'll be more favorable.
So that project could be taken care of this year?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's our intent to take care of it this year.
How much is budgeted for that?
About 100,000, David?
80 to 100.
Yeah. Depends on the bid. It came in, I think last year, it came in well over that.
That's right.
So we had to reject it because we didn't have funds. Plus, we felt that we could get a better environment right now.
Thank you. Can I continue?
Yep.
Two more?
You have two more. Let's do them, and
Okay.
that's why we're here.
Let's see, information technology, page 88. I'm wondering about if you start looking at the city municipal budget, and we're talking a lot about consolidation. Is the issue of consolidation being taken into consideration between the departments so we don't have duplication? And
Right. What we have is a unified information technology department. And the only areas that is not unified is in the area of instruction over at the school department, which you're probably aware of. With regards to police and fire and libraries, we do have it unified under one department, and we schedule all these through working with police, working with fire, working with the libraries to try to schedule them in. So they are unified. We use unified equipment and software, so we try to stay as consistent as possible.
thank you very much. And my last one has to do with all the bike paths and the pedestrian walkways. Just wanted to take into consideration any opportunity we have to work with the Safe Routes to Schools and use money from those grants and those monies so we don't have to use municipal money.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Lister. Council Coviello, were you up to bat?
Sure. Page 47, the outside perimeter camera at the library. What is driving this need?
There was a request for this because of an incident that happened, and it was determined that because of the trying to balance the needs of the library interior, that we didn't want to have cameras in the library, but we would like to have the cameras on the exterior of the library to dual roles to determine if there's any activity going on outside, the vandalism and the like, and if the police need to try to locate somebody that may have been somebody that we needed to locate from the library, leaving the library, we'd have at least an opportunity to do that. Mary Ann, do you want to add to that at all?
No, the only other thing I would say is 2.5 years ago, we did an assessment of the building with the police department, looking at things that would help to make the building as safe as possible for all the different populations that we have there. And we have done a number of those things. The cameras were one of the suggestions at that time, and we just have not done those yet.
Chief, I'll just ask, do you have anything further to add to the need on that one? Because I want to answer Tony's question.
Thank you, sir. I just want to reinforce the fact that it's not going to be a proactive monitoring system, meaning that only after an event occurs at the library would we be forensically looking at the videotapes to see who may have exited at the time that the event occurred.
Thank you. Further questions, Tony?
Is this just questions? Or?
You can, question, comment, some point of interest within the capital plan.
Just so that for council members, the new council members, amendments may be offered on March 15th when it's up. So there would, at March 15th, after the public hearing on March 1st, the capital plan would be before the city council, and amendments could be offered at that time before the capital plan is adopted. Again, remembering it is a capital plan, and during the budget process is pretty much when the rubber hits the road, when you want to make actual reductions or additions.
Sure. And then if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Page 59, the Prescott Park Facilities Capital Improvements. It seems to me that this one is a big policy decision for the council. Has this happened in the past? Have we been?
Well, it's actually a policy decision for the trustees of the trust. In conjunction with the city council. And we have had a conversation before relative to this issue. And again, this is just an identification this year to try to get it up on the radar so that people can start talking about it. As the trustees have indicated, and Peter being their representative tonight, and I see Phyllis Eldridge is here tonight as well from the trustees, that we need to address the issue of the concession stand and the bathrooms. The concession stand, if we're going to keep it as a concession stand, has to have substantial upgrades so that it can be opened as a concession stand. And in addition to that, we need to make adjustments to the restrooms. They have not been upgraded in
25 years.
Yeah, at least 25 years, and we need to, if we're going to do any adjustments to that, we need to reflect what the, with regards to the size of the bathrooms for male, female.
The item that I was specifically addressing was on page 59, wasn't the restrooms or the concession stand. It was the restoration of the historic buildings. That, I believe, is the only item coming out of the general fund.
Correct.
The other ones are private partnerships. So I guess, has there been a history of us doing this, or is this the first time that they've...
Well, what we did about, Peter, 4 years ago, we started including the Prescott Park in the trustees in the capital improvement process. We felt because it is a city facility that is administered by the trustees of trust, we had a responsibility to make sure that these facilities are kept up and in good repair. The trustees, as everybody else have, and the trust does a great job in keeping their budget in line, but they've had some tough investment years as well. So we felt that it was important to work with the trustees to protect our investment, and we've started to slowly put our foot in the water on these types of things.
Would this be the first year?
We did 1 year was replacement of docks, but that was on a loan basis. We've actually done a replacement of a vehicle.
Rolling stock.
This would be the first year for direct improvements to buildings. Answer your question.
Okay, thank you. And one other
Yeah,
one.
sure.
Page 78, the reclamation of the former stump dump. Is this a requirement of DES, or is this something we're doing preparation for the future?
This would be what we would want to do to prepare for a ball field out there. I mean, I don't think DES really considers it an active. It's a stump facility. I don't know if I'd call it a dump. There's stumps in it, and I don't think really DES cares. I think, Steve, maybe talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing over the next year.
The last stumps that went in there were probably well in excess of 30 years ago. The state is always concerned with anything like that to make sure that it's properly backfilled and really can't build a structure on it because those stumps will slowly decay over time. But all we're doing with this funding is getting it graded off so that it's ready for whatever kind of recreational use the city wants to put the property to. It's not, creating a field. It's creating the space so that it's ready for that operation.
Thank you.
Let's see. I actually saw Jerry before we moved back to this side. So, Councilor Hitmanik.
Maybe I have a quick question. Page 56. It's the comprehensive facility planning assessment for the elementary schools. And while I can understand the need for the assessment, I'm wondering why it's 4 years ahead of the project. It seems like awfully early.
Well, again, this, if you recall, I believe it was Councilor Dwyer that had asked for this last year. We started funding it because it was in conjunction with the whole issue of the middle school, and I won't speak for Councilor Dwyer, but we felt that once it's in place, we could then start doing this is very preliminary conversations and discussions as it relates to these buildings. I'd let Steve Bartlett.
Yeah, my question is just a timing question. It seems
Steve?
It really is the first step towards working on a long-range plan for reconfiguring or renovating the elementary situation. And I've done some checking to see what those types of studies would cost. And it'll give us an opportunity to start the planning process. Now, it is, originally, I'm not so sure that the elementary schools were pushed out so far, but we've moved them out at least once. So that may have an effect on the timing, but it'll take a good deal of time to get that analysis done and all the public input and everything else. So.
One of the other things I think, and what we did is I took the opportunity this year, along with working with the finance staff, to look at all the large bonding projects, and we did some rearranging so that if you look into the financial section, we had some bubble years where things were spiking pretty good. And we just felt we weren't comfortable exceeding the 10% limit that we set on ourselves. So what we did is we set out to, in working a lot with the finance department, we rearranged where these projects are going to hit. So that one probably was a little closer in. I think that might have been a year closer in. But what we did, councilors, we didn't feel comfortable with everything bunched up because of the projects that are coming in. So we spread them out, and we tried to put them in places where we would have a smooth transition.
Okay. Councilor Kennedy.
I have a couple things. On page 46, and this kind of came out of Councilor Lister's plan. Don't we already do fingerprinting for other entities through our police department?
We fingerprint employees and possible applicants. We also fingerprint all of our prisoners. What this machine does is it merges technologies amongst the police departments so that when we lift a fingerprint at a crime scene, right now it's upwards to 2 years before we get that fingerprint analyzed at the state level. This would merge the technology so that we could directly enter it and get a much more timely response, probably that same within an hour. So it's mostly computerized things, but we would be able to cross-agency check that fingerprint on applicants as well to see what other local police departments might have criminal records.
One of the other things we talked about, and I don't know if the chief and I were talking about it briefly, was maybe looking at other departments that might be interested in participating with this on it. I don't know, Chief, if you, at this point, have explored it any further with any surrounding departments?
They would not be, in order for them to participate in our system, they'd have to share some of the expenses of our system. It's not.
That was the intent, yeah.
Correct. Correct. And they don't have the money right now, I got to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Kennedy,
On page
yep.
63 on the master plan, in this $25,000 that is marked for 2011, when would the public start the involvement? What I guess when you do the evaluations, what does that really mean? Maybe
Well, the initial 25,000 is really meant to be some more in the order of specialized studies and data collection. That the public involvement would really be in the FY12, FY13 when you have those larger sums that are appropriated. So this is just for some really preliminary studies. So we have data. It sometimes helps when you have those discussions to actually have data to show people so they can react to it.
Well, then that brings me to my second part of this question. Would we want a preliminary public kind of idea to see what kind of data people would like to get?
I'm not sure how you asked that question. It was kind of an open-ended question. I mean, we have some pretty good ideas. We want to be looking at neighborhoods right now and understanding what the issues are, because our zoning right now is kind of broad-based. We'd like to focus in on some neighborhoods, and that's kind of the direction we were going, looking at neighborhood data. We could always, if we had additional funds, we could do more of that, but I think we're not ready to get there yet because we're just at the 5-year point in the master plan right now.
Okay, well, I would encourage us to look at maybe including the public to see what initially we want, so we're not doing a study after study for the same thing. Just an idea. On page 95, as part of this ride-sharing information, I don't know how many of you have been up to the C&J terminal lately, but it's overloaded. It's really hard to find a park, even to do public transportation. So, and when I came out this weekend, I realized that someone was parking there, was doing this ride commuting kind of thing, because it was free parking and it's sensible. They knew where it was to be safe. So, in looking at that, I guess, what other options will people have, and maybe letting them know sooner rather than later so that it can alleviate some of the things that are happening up at C&J Trailways of people that are trying to be proactive and take the bus to work and to Boston. Just an idea. And on page 111, you mentioned that a developer had given a certain amount of funds, and the question I have is how much, because it wasn't in here.
It's the, if you look at the bottom of it, it says Christmas tree shop, 250,000.
It's the section that we added a couple of years ago, Counselor.
Oh, okay, I missed it. It was over
funds.
here. I was looking in this part. Okay, and lastly, on this kind of overview that you prepared for us, under the grand totals, if you look, if I took out the enterprise funds because I figured those would come off cost sharing from entities, but that leaves you like roughly $8 million. How much of that $8 million, without having to go back and figure every little thing, what percentage of $8 million is being used for matching funds for federal and state?
Let's see here. Let me just take a look.
Well, you take the 17,150,000.
Okay, what page are you on the handout?
Oh, 18, the last page, under grand totals.
Okay.
And I just took out the enterprise funds because I knew already those were the funds from, so that was $9,250,000 because those are being compensated by. But my question was, of you can use 17 million, or of the 7 million,
Are you in the bond lease? Is that what you're looking at?
yeah,
It appears that you were in the bond lease column? Yeah, okay.
in the bond lease column, how much a percentage, or what is need of that is matching funds for the federal?
You mean excluding the enterprise funds?
Yeah, because you already know where those are coming from.
Right. Let me take a look at this quickly. They would be sprinkled probably within the in the transportation areas mostly. Andrew, do you have a number on that?
That's right.
So are you asking what is the match with bonding numbers?
How much of the bonding is being used for federal and state match? If any.
It looks like it would be no matching. It's all bonding. The bonding projects would all be local dollars.
Okay.
No, well, no, that's not correct. If you look to page 17, if you look under, if that's page 17 on that, if you look at projects that we have listed, and where you see on the left-hand side CIP page, if you look under, let's say, for example, page 132, you look all the way out and you'll see on the federal and state, you'll see there's a match in there for those funds. So there is, under total transportation management, federal and state coming back of approximately $3.8 million. And that would be commingled. You would then, it's hard to, what I'm saying, Council, is we have to bond it first, and then we get reimbursed from the state on those projects. So the city goes forward and bonds it, and then the money comes into us and we pay it.
Right. And I was just curious what the total of, if you had bonded it, what the total is coming back.
Right. And if you look at that on the total transportation management, which is really where we're going to get our federal reimbursement, it's about $3,866,000 on the federal and state. You follow? You see it under that column? Okay.
So you're saying that all is going to bonding and not general fund?
Well, it would go for reimbursement. We only bond what we have to bond to put out front. So, for example, Steve, give an example like, let's do, an example would be the Sagamore Bridge.
Sagamore Bridge, we would bond the
$1 million. And then the other $3 million
would be, as we do the project, the state reimburses us on a regular basis as we submit invoices to them.
Okay, so then this figure of 17,150,000 is everything that has to be bonded with no matching.
Well, that's not absolutely correct. When you look at it, yes, there may be $17 million that needs to be bonded. But if you look to the right, you'll see there's federal money of $4.8 million.
Right, so now that comes out of the general fund. It's just bonding. That's what I'm looking at.
Correct.
Further inquiries or comments? Esther, do you have any further at this time?
Not at this moment. I got to figure this out.
All right. Councilor Dwyer.
This is probably for Steve Achilles. In the pages 38 to 42, how do the various vehicles relate to the different locations that they'll, at which fire stations they will be? Or for some of these, they may not be location-oriented, I realize that, but some may be location-specific.
Actually, based on the design of the truck and its purpose, it could be located at any one of the 3 stations. It's more standard of coverage than what is going to be staffed by. So each station typically has at least one engine, one ambulance, and 2 of the stations will have an aerial device, and that's an even disbursement of the proper standard coverage of the apparatus. So what we're trying to do here, and a good example would be the engine that we want to replace in FY11 is a combination pumper aerial device, and we already have 2. So we're trying to focus on standard coverage and replace it with just an engine which would be less expensive and actually more functional for our city. Does that answer your question?
Well, I think it sort of does. I guess, would it be fair to say then all of these are possible to serve at any one of the stations? Because I know, for example, we all know with Station 3 that by size it's just limited in what it can have.
Right, and we don't have the aerial devices there, but one of the other aspects of this is we need to rotate the apparatus because it would be, because of its use, you have to rotate every about 5 years from first due to second due. So the engine that we would be getting in FY11 actually may serve at Station 1 for 5 or 6 years, and then may serve in a reserve capacity at one of the other stations.
And how about the one then for FY13? Same kind of thing on page 41. Same idea?
That is correct.
And same idea on page 42?
That is correct. The only specialized piece you'll see, Counselor, is the rescue unit, which has specific function that is looking at FY12. It's not a primary fire apparatus.
A one-of-a-kind kind of thing.
It's a special operations heavy rescue vehicle with rescue tools. So that one would have to be assigned to a specific station and serve as a specific function.
Councilor Dwyer.
Page 54, this is just a little minor question, but it's about the 6 years prior funding that we have accumulated for school facilities capital improvements. Do I read that as those are monies that are being spent on this year's capital improvements? Correct. Okay.
Those are, for example, when we go and look at the bleachers and the roof at Dundero, that's what's included in it.
Okay, good. And page 66, I don't believe this field did come into our discussion on the presentation of fields on Friday, the Doble field.
If you recall, that one was identified a couple years ago during the process, and we're not even sure if this is going to come available and when it's going to come available. We like to keep it identified in the event it does. We don't want to lose it in the whole process, and so we're pretty much at the mercy of the federal government when they decide to dispose of this property.
But unlike, and building on the very first question Councilor Kleberg asked, where we know this is sort of a work in progress right now, and the other fields that we're looking at are, well, let me ask two questions related to that. This was not one that is kind of in the high priority fields area, but then I guess I also was expecting to find in here the fields, the Beverly Hill fields that we all talked about on Friday. Is that just a timing thing, John?
It's a timing thing because when this was put together, we were in basically was put together, we still are in negotiations. Tomorrow, the Stokel family may say, no, we're not interested. So until you act, it would be a little bit premature for us to put somebody else's property in here without having some comfort factor that we would be able to secure it.
Okay. All right, so obviously we'll revisit Doble as a recreation place when the time comes.
Sure, and again, that might end up push off to 2014, but we'd like to identify it because we don't want to lose track of it. And the whole idea of a capital plan is to memorialize things and from year to year to make sure that we are paying attention to the goals that we've set out, and I find from time to time if you drop something off and want to replace it later on, it sometimes might get lost in the mix. So the idea is to keep this memorialized within the capital plan. Same as with those other projects that Steve talked about that are further out. We want to identify those and have those so people understand that we are aware of the issues, but it's going to be, for example, one instance 2020 before we were going to have a solution to that.
Councilor Dwyer.
67, this is the Jones Avenue Conceptual Master Plan. you know, of all the kinds of things that we might spend conservation money for, this is the kind of thing that seems to me it might go for the money that we've accumulated over time for conservation. Is there a reason why?
I'd have to check the statutes. The statutes are pretty clear on how you can spend that money, and so I don't believe that it would be eligible for that.
Really?
So, but I
Okay.
can check that just to make sure. I can do that. Chris?
And
Yeah,
then
keep
just
going.
one more little question, and that is, are we finally starting on design for wayfinding this year?
One would hope. What's happened in the past is we've cut that back,
I
if you're
know.
well aware. So, until we can actually fund it, we can't, it's something that requires substantial sums of money, and we need to be committed to it.
That's it.
Counselor Spear.
Thank you. I have three questions. My first is on sidewalks. I guess for the two types of sidewalks we employed, the concrete and the brick sidewalks, two questions. When or where are different sidewalks, those two sidewalks used? And then secondly, in just estimating, what's the cost differential between brick sidewalks and concrete sidewalks?
I'll answer the first. About 8 years ago, City Council made a determination that within the historic district, we would replace with brick. And then about the same time period, anything outside that would be replaced with concrete. As it relates to the cost differential, I'll turn that to Steve Parker.
It's roughly about $5 more per square yard for the brick than the concrete.
So an example, Steve, on, let's say, 100 feet of sidewalk, let's say.
100 feet of sidewalk, about $5,000 difference.
I mean, that's the difference, but okay, and then what is the, I have no idea how much 100 feet of sidewalk costs, so is that a lot or a little in terms of the difference?
Not really. It's probably 25% more expensive.
Okay. I know that it was one thing I heard from a lot of people was they have so many brick sidewalks going so far out, and I think they're very appropriate for certain areas of the city, but I wonder if it's something we could be more judicious.
And Steve, I think we've stayed within the historic district, haven't we?
Oh, we have, absolutely. But
that's the way it was defined. If the council wants to change its policy, that's fine. We can do that.
I'm not going to do that tonight, but I wanted to think about that as.
But it was set by the city council, so
Absolutely.
we're not going to unilaterally
I'm not going
reset
to.
it. No.
Yeah, and you guys won't either, right.
And the thing is that if it needs to be reset, then certainly the council can
It would
do
be a
that.
discussion,
Yeah.
right. And then the laptops used in the cruisers, I guess, I don't know if it's for Alan or Lou, but those particular laptops are expensive because they need to be durable to handle the cruiser environment, right?
That's correct.
I'm wondering, as smartphones become smarter, is there a way we can start looking at getting some of the functionality that you need as an officer in the cruiser to be held in a handheld device, which would be a lot cheaper?
That's correct. I know that Jim Smith, Gil Emery here at the police department, and Alan have all already explored the PDAs, the handheld devices. They don't project a big enough screen yet to be something that's good at night and dim lighting and things like that. They do have their limitations, but that is new technology that the IT is looking at. I don't know too much about it. I do know that the ruggedized laptops that they have in the cruisers, those Panasonic Toughbooks, they do seem to hold up pretty good. They get the touch screens to them. We've had them now for 10, 15 years. We use the same product, so they seem to be holding up well over time. But yeah, we're looking at the handhelds, but we just haven't found anything that's good for street application yet.
Can I just ask a follow-up to Eric's question to get an idea? So if you're looking at a driver's record or a record of, I don't know if you can call up a police record of someone, but you can call up a driver's record, I'm assuming. So if you do that and you're trying to look at a driver's record on a handheld, that kind of creates the concern, right?
Correct. So the same limitations you have looking at your PDA would be the same limitations that the police officer would have had. It would be very small font and very small image.
Okay, thank you. Last question regarding you had mentioned previously the financing or the total debt burden, and it does show, I think in FY16, we do eclipse eclipse the 10% limit just ever so slightly. Is that something that, I guess, the group that works on the planning document or the council is going to have to be looking at going forward to keep
Well,
eyes
again,
on that?
it was substantially, there were a lot more peaks and valleys, and so working with the finance department, we made those adjustments. You have to realize that we wanted to stay within the, for example, your 10 basis points over the, the 10%, and that was an acceptable range for us at this time, but it was also, and this is on page 29, that was also something that's why we have that number, just to give us the flag. So when we originally had this, we had some numbers that hit 11, and so we sat down and we spent some time going through and rearranging how we wanted to set some of the bonding, and so that's what we did. And this, because of its closeness to this, depending on timing and things, this number could drop below that. The tool is really is almost warning bells. It's not to be precise out in 2016. We do show you all the amortization schedules here, but when you're out to 2016, it could shift 40 basis points either way. But it does give us a nice warning sign, and that's what it did. We saw it and we said, well, we need to really look at spreading some of this out and pushing it to other areas, so other dates.
Okay, any further questions, Council Spear? We'll go to Assistant Mayor Claiborne.
John, why is there no middle school in here? I know last year we have...
The middle school is already been done. It already has been approved. It's already been bonded. You would find the middle school in the amortization schedule into the future as a bonded but unissued.
And what year will that show up again?
Well, it's going to show probably this fiscal year. In fiscal year 11, it's going to show up again, and it will be as part. We're going to probably go out. We'll probably finance about $15 million this year, because there's certain requirements under the federal law that you have to spend money within a certain period of time. You can't hold it. So we couldn't go out for the entire $37.5 million all at once, because we would not physically be able to spend it in the time frame that's required under the federal laws. Those laws were changed back in 1986 to prevent cities and towns from doing what they call arbitrage, and that being that you borrow that money, you invest it, and then you earn interest over and above what, it's a loss to the federal treasury, basically, because it's non-taxable on the federal level. So what we do is we have certain guidelines that we have to follow, that we have to spend within certain periods of time, and if we don't, it's more of a deflective arbitrage issue where it becomes a real pain in the neck to try to deal with. So what we do is we try to time it. We originally looked at doing bond anticipation notes and then bonding everything at the end. But, talking with our financial advisor and looking at what's happening, we didn't want to wait 2 or 3 years to do permanent financing because we feel that right now we'd like to do a chunk of permanent financing now with a favorable rates.
So it's not in here because it's money that will come to us, but we don't have to pay it back?
No. It's listed, and once it's not listed in the actual element sheets because we've already appropriated. We've always gone. It's a project in process of being built, just like Fire Station 2. We don't show that in the element sheets, but we do show it on the debt service schedule. Does that answer your question?
Council Coviello.
Page 64, Pierce Island Master Plan implementation. Can I get another description on what the $50,000 would be spent on? What I heard was signs, and I know that can't be true.
Again, if I defer to David, why don't you go forward and speak to the issue?
There's currently an RFP out for design work for both graphic work and installation for waste finding related signage for the island. And the implementation of those signs when the design is completed, which is part of this $50,000. And we are talking about signage for the boat launch, signage for the playground area, signage for the other more eastern end of the island, and you're talking foundations and related components as well as fabrication and installation. So that is what that is intended
And it's
for.
not all signs. The additional phase projects would be, as we said, for trail segments, improvements to the pool building and boat launch parking area. So we work with the Pierce Island Committee. We try to, they have a segment of money that we work with them on. So, for example, tonight, I know that Councilor Kennedy was there. They get a lot of volunteer work and a lot of pro bono work. And then there's also work that they want to see happen. And we put aside over a period of years a certain amount of money that we work with the Pierce Island Committee to expend, but it's not all signs.
Tony?
Page 67. I think this is a request from Councilor Spear last year, the Jones Avenue Conceptual Master Plan. What is it that we're trying to get at? That we're trying to get a study that says what?
Well, again, what we've done in the past is we've identified large parcels of land, everything from the Great Bog to there's other projects that we've had. I can't recall off the top of my head, but we've actually tried to master plan those. And this would include a public process to look at, the uses of it. Maybe there's a combined use. Maybe there's a combined recreation use and conservation use. When we showed at the retreat the concept for recreation use up there, we showed that, I believe, David, what was it, 12% of the property?
That's right.
That was going to be used for recreation, and 88% of the property would have been used for conservation. So those are the kinds of things we want to look at. I mean, it is a wonderful resource out there, and we have not really taken a hard look at how we can use that. I defer to Councilor Spear, who asked that this be put in last year, and let him speak to it.
When I worked, or when I was serving on the Pierce Island Committee, one of the tools that we had, which I think we used to our great advantage, was the Pierce Island Master Plan, and it provided a roadmap for the next 15 years where we could, as money became available, grow the island. And I thought that was a great success, and so I saw a similar resource out here, and I wanted to take a similar approach.
That is a good example. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay. Further questions? Tony, you have the floor.
Page 96. We've been talking a lot about parking lately, and where people are and are not parking. Do we have any ideas on the efficiency of this space, how well they're used?
John, this is dealing with the Masonic, the South Playground, and the Parrott Avenue, and the Bethel Assembly.
My question specifically is the Masonic.
John?
It's roughly 45% occupancy rate.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Further questions, councilors? Councilor Smith.
Thank you. I just have one, and I guess it's more of a comment on 111 for Mr. Parkinson. Recently, I saw on the news that some of the streetlights, some of the communities have gone to these LED streetlights, and in the winter months, the LEDs don't have enough heat to melt the snow and ice that can accumulate from during storms. Do we have any LED lights, and have we had any of those problems in this area?
We have had LED lights in our traffic signals for probably now 15 years and have never had any issues with them.
Terrific. Thank you.
Reminds me of planning board days and Councilor Smith's questions about lights and so forth. Further questions or inquiry from the City Council for the City Manager, Councilor Kennedy.
I just have one kind of overriding question. Say we did this 2011, what kind of rate would that be? What kind of addition to that would be on the tax rate?
Oh, excuse me, I didn't understand the question, Councilor.
If we did the 2011 for the grand total, what would be the addition to the
1.5, the 1.5 million?
Oh, 1.5 million? Yeah. Oh, okay. That would be about 10 cents on the tax rate. No, yeah, about 10 cents. No, it would be 30, excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me do the calculation. It'd be about 39 cents, I'm sorry. 1.5.
Anything further, Council Kennedy?
It pretty much sums it up.
All righty. Council Coviello?
If the parking manager would be great to answer this one, or John or anybody else. Would there be a loss in revenue, or are the parking meters failing so bad, page 98, that reducing or not spending the full $150,000 in FY11, is that really not a gain because of loss?
I'll let John speak to that issue. John?
The single-space meters are a few years beyond their lifespan at this point, and this is part of the replacement for those meters. Do we experience a loss of revenue from failed single-space meters? Yes, we do. The reducing it, I don't know what impact that would have. I can't specifically say that we've got to replace X numbers of meters this year, but this was part of the phased process that we had put forth at the beginning.
Is there a bulk purchase price? For example, if you did, instead of 2 years of 150,000 or 3 years of 100,000, is there some? Are we purchasing these in bulk and getting a better price? Any of those?
We're on a contract right now, so the price is set for 3 years.
So we could, to answer your question, you could reduce that down if you wanted to.
Thank you.
Further, one comment I'll make at this time, and I've said this to some councilors, is in case people are percolating and have additional questions. It's one of the things that we wanted to do in combination with this, because it makes us mindful of what it is we buy and expend on for capital purposes, that as part of a meeting out in time, we can have a presentation on how we procure, bond, and spend, so that we understand that as a city council. That's not something we've looked at recently, because a lot of people understand it, but there are a lot of new people that might not. And so that's something we can look at out in time, so you understand the how besides just the what. But it's not something obviously for this evening. Further questions by the city council? City manager.
Just that we will. This is up on the website. We will have a public hearing before the city council on March 1st. Then subsequent to the public hearing, again, just a reminder that there would be adoption of the plan at March 15th. At that time, amendments could be offered, and we would then move forward with that into the, hold it into the proposed fiscal year 11 budget.
And I'll make one editorial comment, not advocating for a particular amount, but I just ask councilors, as we go through what will be a difficult budget season, as we all know, one of the in the past couple of years, we have cut down that amount of that 1.5 that we carry, and whatever number we get to this year, we do. But I do want to caution councilors to consider that sometimes in difficult economies, the worst decisions you can make is to continue to cut capital expenditures, and we are paying the price for that now in many, many ways. Middle school's a great example, probably the biggest example. So I ask everybody to be mindful of that, and again, I'm not advocating for a particular amount, but the impacts, the long-term impacts, are something that, we don't want to just be one-year money source, folks. Any other comments or questions or inquiry? And you're going to get another opportunity, so I bear that in mind and get your ideas. The other thing is if there's something that you don't fully understand, you want to cut something, it always helps to you can ask the city manager, and he'll direct city staff so that you understand the impacts of cuts. And you understand fully the cut it is that you're requesting, or what would be the impact of leaving something out in time. And naturally, we do that in the course of the meeting as well, but it is fairly complex, and a number of you have gotten really adept at doing it, and it is part of the process, so I just offered that as well. Councilor Noveline-Claiborne, Assistant Mayor Noveline-Claiborne.
Is it the 15th, then, that we should come with a list of suggestions?
Again,
Is that before that, or?
Well, I guess it would be I would, if there is something that you feel that if there's substantial change to the capital plan, then my suggestion is that you give them to me so that we can insert those for fiscal year 12. Fiscal year 11 has gone through a huge process with the subcommittees, the staff, the planning board. You know, it is a plan. It is a plan. Don't get locked in that it's a budget. It's not a budget. You really can control what you're going to spend during your budget process. And when we're in the budget process in the general fund area, we can say, you know, we want to reduce. Let's say there's hypothetically $500,000 worth of projects. The time for that conversation will be in the context of the entire budget. That's right. It's not going to be in the context of the capital improvement plan. And as part of that, let's say, for example, well, next year we don't want to bond X amount of dollars. That'll be in the context of the budget, so we can reduce the budget. It's not in the context of the capital improvement plan. It's a plan. It's more or less the map.
And for those of you that are, it's the idea of looking at the number in a vacuum versus in combination with all the other expenditures we're making, because then you don't, and the revenues, because then you don't make a balanced decision. If you just say it's X, you really need to compare it to everything, because a lot of these expenditures, like other expenditures we want to make, it's just a question of which ones we can make.
And the time you'll be making those decisions will be when you're seeing all the revenue, all the other expenditures, and you'll have to make your decisions based on that information you have available at that time. Okay?
With that, no one has any other burning need to speak. I thank you all, and we'll end the work session, and we'll see you soon. And don't forget, February 19th, if you have questions, if those of you that want to.